Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. Welcome to the podcast that breaks down the stories shaping our nation and puts it right in your hands. We take social, political, and economic factors that are driving change across the nation and break it down for you so that you know what matters and why. No fluff, no filler, just real talk. So let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Namibia Needs Me podcast, a platform where we take the latest news and integrate some civic education zazz into it. Joining me today, my co-host, Ethne, over to you.
Thank you, Janola. I'm Ethne Munch, and I'm accompanied by Janola Nausep, and together we are the Namibia Needs Me podcast, where we take the news from the week, a week's roundup of news, and try to infuse some history, some context, some pizzazz, but mostly some civic education to just get people to feel really empowered to vote in the upcoming elections. And we've got some news that feeds right into that, don't we? From the Windhoek Observer on the 6th of May, there was a post, Janola, some interesting developments.
Yes, very interesting story. So you have Mr. Joseph Kwandenge, who is a former Secretary General of NUDO, one registered political party, who has resigned and registered a local authority association called ASOLI. Well, that is their abbreviation. ASOLI basically stands for Association for Localized Interests. So Kwandenge is a former member of parliament, also a former councillor under the municipality council, and subsequently he's now also former secretary of the National Unity Democratic Organization, also known as NUDO. And recently, as per the news, he launched his association, saying that he feels that a lot of times people's interests are not being reflected in municipal dealings, and that is basically what his association will focus on. And seeing that we have the local authority and regional council elections coming up, it'll be a very interesting thing to see how well they perform.
So Joseph Kwandenge's history is that he served one term as a city councillor from 2015 to 2019. And then directly after that, from 2020 to 2025, was a member of parliament.
Parliament, yes, alongside their party president, Esther Mountjengwa, if I remember well.
Yes, so there had 2 seats that term, and the total number of seats the maximum number of seats NUDO has ever had is 3 seats.
Yes, since independence.
Something interesting that you told me earlier about Esther, what was that?
Oh yes, so during when the 7th National Assembly took over in 2020, Esther was appointed as Deputy Minister of Health by His Excellency late Dr. Hage Geingob. And this was a very shocking thing because for the first time in the country's history, you had a sitting president from a particular party who ended up appointing a member of the opposition party into his cabinet. So that was a very interesting thing to see in terms of President Geingob's leadership and how he wanted to sort of unify his cabinet or, unify the country as a whole.
Okay, so an effort of unification. I didn't actually interpret it as that at first, but that's an interesting way to see it. So basically he appointed someone from another party to his cabinet. That was Esther as the Minister of Health in the 7th
National
Assembly. Interesting, right? Okay, so what else do we know about this? This is going to be the second ever association that's being registered for the elections, for the regional elections, local and regional authority elections.
Yeah, so particularly for Windhoek. So as of the Electoral Commission's data, there are 16, previously 15 associations across the country, but only 2, which is the June 16 movement and ASOLI now, that are under the City of Windhoek municipality.
ASOLI, it does go off the tongue quite well, ASOLI. Yeah. Okay, well, so hold up, Janola, because you're speaking in educated tones here. For those of us who don't understand this so well, what is an association and why am I voting for an association? Explain that to us, because not everyone knows that, you can vote for an association, and you can even vote for an individual when it comes to the regional elections. So in 2025, later this year, we're going to have elections.
Yeah.
It's for our local and our regional authorities.
Yeah.
When it comes to local authorities, you can only vote for a party or an association.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the regional elections, which will be happening at the same time, you can vote for a party or an association.
No.
Or an individual. No, help me out.
For a political party or an individual. So basically for the regional council, you can vote for a political party and their candidate, whose candidate name will appear on the ballot, or you can vote for an independent candidate.
Great.
And then for local authority, you can then only vote for an association and or a political party.
Okay.
So under the Electoral Act, associations function as a political party, but for local authority elections only.
Okay, so this whole idea of an association that you can vote for is only ever applicable when it comes to voting for your local authority.
Yes.
And your local authority is something like a municipality.
Yes, a town council.
A town council.
Or a village council.
Or a village council. So if you're in a city, your local authority is your municipality. If you're in a town, your local authority is the town council. If you're in a village, your local authority is your village council.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And there you can vote for something called an association. So you don't have to vote for one of the parties, political parties. You can actually vote for an association or start your own association.
Yeah. So folks, each segment of our podcast will connect headlines to actions that you as a citizen can take to stay engaged, informed, and contribute to your community. On that note, it's very important for you as a citizen to even just sort of know who you're voting for. For instance, when you are voting for a regional councillor, you know that this specific political party or this specific independent candidate, this is their name and this is who I'm voting for, right? But particular with local authority elections, you only see the logo of an association or the logo of a political party. But what they are required to do, Ethne, is they are required to submit a list of names. If, like in the case of Windhoek, they must submit, each association or political party must submit 15 names. But in other towns, let's say for a town council, only 7 names, and for village councils, only 5 names. So what happens is that oftentimes with people, we don't read who are the individuals that these specific political parties or associations have put on their list.
Okay, so listen, help me out. Am I understanding you correctly? What you're saying is that when it comes to voting for your local elections, you will get
water,
to vote for either an association or a political party.
Waste management.
And then when you vote for that association or political party, they will get a proportion of the number of seats available. When it comes to
even political party A,
a city, it will be 15 seats. When it comes to a town, it will be 7 seats. When it comes to a village, it will be 5 seats.
When those list of candidates take office, I can count on
the party that you vote for or the association that you vote for will get a proportion of those seats.
Effectively.
Your job is to know who they are putting forward to fill those 15 seats. Because if you see a list of incompetent people, even if they're from your favorite party, you're going to want to go, okay, but who are the competent people? Who are the people I know will be taking care of my interests when it comes to really important stuff?
Yeah.
Interesting thing to note. But another interesting thing that you said is when it comes to your regional elections, that's when you're actually voting for an individual.
Yes.
So it might be an individual from one of the political parties.
Or independent,
Or independent, right? So, okay. And also that's a chance for people to still get their act together and start, putting themselves forward for election by June or whenever the elections are this year.
Okay, so much you have to check the list of it beforehand, because is that list available when you go to the polling station, or is it something you have to research for yourself beforehand?
It's something you have to research for yourself beforehand.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Ethne, we recently had a community dialogue in the Zambezi region,
Okay.
in the particularly in the community in Katima, in Kamunu. And what happened was that we invited a lot of CDC members. So CDC members are Community Development Committee. So each constituency has a community development committee that comprises of sometimes 10 to 15 individuals that are basically just members of the community that, work closely with their councillor to deal with issues, right? So we invited a lot of them. We had over 21 CDC members. And funny enough, we had about 5 CDC chairpersons also present. And what happened was that we had a lot of unhappiness from the members of the community. They said, no, we want to meet our councillor. These are the issues. Until one very bold lady stood up and said, my name is Petra so. Did you know that I ran for councillor, but you didn't vote for me? That's why you are facing these challenges. It was very interesting because now she said, I presented myself as a candidate competent to lead the constituency, but unfortunately, I only had a few votes. And when we looked at the data at that time, we discovered that she only had 165 votes out of 3,000 people that voted in that specific constituency.
Yeah.
No, interesting. Expect a breakdown of key events, policy changes, and social dynamics that influence our political landscape. Moving on, there's another interesting story that was published by the Namibian on the 2nd of May.
Okay.
And it was with regards to the presidential advisors. One of the presidential advisors leaving office, where Munyepe had to step down as an economic advisor, who he also happens to be the Green Hydrogen Commissioner. That position he will retain, but he will no longer be a presidential advisor.
Yeah.
And on that note, what has happened was that because of the unfortunate events of the recalling of the former Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Water, the president had to appoint one of her advisors as a non-voting member into the National Assembly and also then as the minister of that particular ministry. And now as it stands, as of today, the president only has 2 advisors, which is Alfredo Hengari, who also is a special advisor, and the press secretary, and Ms. Deidre Obao, who happens to be the youth and enterprise advisor.
Correct.
Yeah, what is your take on that?
No, just worth noting, I think, that the president had 4 advisors yesterday, and today she has 2.
Yeah.
Deidre Obao's Instagram account said that they had 5, but we only found 4 on the website.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we only have those 2 as our advisors at the moment. And I know that they would be doing great work. But I want to also take us back because you were going over something quite interesting there earlier, that we have 104 voting members.
Of the National Assembly, yes.
96 voting members.
Yeah. All right. So you see, in every democracy, well, particularly for the democracy of Namibia, we have 3 branches of government. We have the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. Now, because these 3 branches are all very powerful, but just to help us understand what happens is, let's say there are 3 boxes in a ring. The duty of each boxer is to make sure no one knocks out the other.
Yeah.
And politically, we call that checks and balances.
Yeah.
So each branch has basically a check and a balance over another branch. So the checks and balances for the executive branch over the legislative is the appointment of 8 non-voting members into the National Assembly that are able to constantly give the presidency and cabinet feedback, that are able to impact policy decisions. Although they are non-voting in terms of passing laws, they are still able to make sound contributions. They're able to take information back to the executive to act on certain issues as they culminate from, parliament sessions and within the standing committees. So basically, as per the Namibia Constitution, the president does have the mandate to appoint 8 individuals into the National Assembly, just as a way to have a foot into the other branch. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I'm hearing you saying is the president is the executive meaning we get things done, we actually execute the laws that you make in parliament, but we're also going to have 8 members in parliament with you. They can't vote, but they're there to also make their voices heard,
to also contribute to policy decisions in terms of the debate, at least.
Yes.
And in terms of feedback to the president and to the executive about what is happening in parliament. Is that kind of a summary of what it is?
Yeah. So that even when the National Council reviews a law and then that law goes to the president, the people that are non-voting could sort of advise in terms of should the president sign it off, because they also serve their dual purpose there. Yeah.
Okay, so now you're bringing in another interesting thing about our democracy, which is that our legislature is not only the National Assembly, it's also the National Council. The National Council is also again elected later this year in the local and regional elections.
Yes, so how it happens is that the moment you vote for your respective councillor, as per your region, if I can use an example, let's say Commerce region. Commerce has 10 constituencies. At the end of this year, you will vote for a councillor for each one of those constituencies. So from those 10 individuals, 3 must represent the region in the National Council. So the National Council is a culmination of councillors, 3 per region from all 14 regions of the country.
Yeah.
So you have 42 councillors that make up the National Council, which is also called the House of Review, because they review all the laws, they review all policy directives that are taken by the National Assembly before they are sent to the president for signing. Yeah.
I've never heard that, the House of Review.
Yes.
I like that. It should be used more often.
Yes, so that we can also understand their purpose.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so remember that the upcoming elections, you get a chance to vote for someone very local to your constituency that gets to review each and every single law that gets passed in this country. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they haven't used that right often, isn't it?
Yes, I know when we were just busy researching, we saw that they have only objected to a law like that was passed by the National Assembly only 6 times, was it?
That was a highlight of like the bills that have been objected to since 2011 was only 6. Yeah,
only 6.
But really, very, very seldom.
Very few are objected to. Yeah. So when we were busy doing our research, we understood that since 2011 there were only about 5 or 6 ethnic laws that have been reviewed by the nation or that have been resent to the National Council because the House of Review felt they needed to be relooked.
Yeah, it was a highlight of some of the laws, but very seldom does anyone actually send back a law from the National Council to the National Assembly, which is a shame. It would be wonderful to see some more lively debate about our laws, I guess. Yeah.
Well, interesting. It helps me think also even in terms of appointments of individuals. For instance, I know that Namibia had a story on the 5th of May where there was some kind of fraudulent activity happening in NAMRA.
Oh,
and then a certain number of individuals were arrested. And we know that politically, the Office of the Auditor General oversees the auditing of all parastatals, SOEs, and all government ministries. And I mean, they always, if they do, they submit their reports as per the organizations and things like that. And we know that the Office of the Auditor General himself is appointed by the President on recommendation of the Public Service Commission, and then approval comes from the National Assembly. My thinking was just that maybe does National Council also have some kind of oversight over the appointment of certain individuals, because I always know it just comes to National Assembly.
Interesting question. Okay, but to backtrack a step and a bit. Yes, the Namibian did say, this is 2 days ago, that NAMRA, the Namibia Revenue Agency, has uncovered some serious fraud in its own ranks and taken steps to dismiss and prosecute those culpable. Quite an interesting thing, like 47 taxpayers were reimbursed taxes that they never paid.
They were never liable for.
They were never liable for. Always wonder when we read stories like this that we really understand that is our money. That is the Namibian, everyday Namibian's money. The money that's supposed to be used to make your life better and safer and your children safer and healthier. That money was stolen in a very creative way. But the individuals involved are being prosecuted. And then we had a little chat about, okay, but so who is responsible for keeping NAMRA accountable to transparency? And we decided, okay, well, it's the Auditor General. And so Auditor General, and who then elects the Auditor General?
So the Auditor General is appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Public Service Commission, as said, and then approval from the National Assembly.
Okay, so wait. So NAMRA is an agency, a government agency.
Yeah, an SOE.
An ASOE. What does SOE stand for?
State-owned enterprise.
State-owned enterprise. Fabulous. And they are supposed to do good work and not be corrupt. And the people who check up on that is the Office of the Auditor General.
Yeah. So the mandate of the Office of the Auditor General is to ensure that there is no abuse of public funds, and that is why they are mandated to audit parastatals, audit SOEs,
All
to
SOEs.
ensure that public funds were spent accordingly.
Fabulous.
But obviously for each parastatal, the onus is first on them to ensure they have mechanisms in place to ensure that, money is spent as per budget approvals, within the confines of the law, yeah.
And so the Office of the Auditor General is appointed by the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission job is to appoint all public servants.
Sort of part of their mandate is to ensure the hiring of public servants, to ensure the effectiveness of public servants, to in this case make recommendations in terms of who should be hired for a specific high-profile job in government, such as the Auditor General.
And then that recommendation is approved by the National Assembly, not the National Council, and the President.
And the President,
Okay,
But you see, Ethne, what happens is that when public funds are misappropriated or abused, as we see in this case, and interestingly, there's another story that the Namibian released on the 3rd, which relates to, I know it was talking about a lot of the ministry and the work that they are doing in terms of trying to build a new state hospital in the Havana area. First, the initial evaluation of costs came at 2.9 billion. Then the second evaluation of costs came to 3.2 billion. But my thinking is that when public funds are spent well, that money could then have been pushed to do social development service delivery initiatives like building this hospital.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah.
Every cent wasted or stolen is a cent that could have gone to caring for your children better, right?
Yeah, and maybe as a food for thought, I know under that same article, the National Infrastructure Atlas, compiled by the NSA, said that Namibia has 530 public health facilities, including 49 hospitals, 60 health centers, and 421 clinics. Is that not interesting to know, like just to visualize,
I mean, I can't visualize those numbers, can you?
Or maybe just to say 421 clinics across the whole country. Very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah. So, Janola, if I understand this correctly, you're saying that the Office of the Auditor General is the oversight body for NAMRA.
Yeah.
And we can trust the Office of the Auditor General because the Office of the Auditor General, everyone there, including the auditor himself or herself, is appointed by the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission appoints all public servants, but when it comes to high-profile positions such as the Auditor General themselves, the Public Service Commission makes a recommendation that is approved by the National Assembly as well as by the President finally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, that as you said is basically the process of appointing the Auditor General. But you see, Ethne, my feeling was that oftentimes we don't realize that when situations like these happen, where millions are misappropriated, such money could have been better spent somewhere else. For instance, if you look at the article that Namibia released on the 3rd of May, where they were talking about the Ministry of Education and how they want to build a new hospital in Havana.
Oh, okay, we're getting a new hospital. Yes, that's right.
So in the initial cost evaluation came out at 2.9 billion, but now it's again at 3.2 billion.
Wow.
Because they want to build a secondary, let's say, state hospital like Kadutura Hospital that will serve to sort of so that there are there's less traffic at the current hospital, so that services are spread abroad, But what happens is that when funds are misappropriated, people are not able to get services like that. And that is genuinely the danger of, fraudulent activity. And maybe that is why the role of the Office of the Auditor General should be more effective in terms of identifying these things, dealing with SOEs in a specific way, have some kind of strong mandate, to stop the flow of funds and things like that.
Yeah.
Just so that it is ensured that public funds are genuinely used for service delivery and for the well-being of the people, whether it's through the building of a hospital or roads or more schools in the Zambezi region or something.
Yeah. About this hospital, there are many people who feel that Namibia has enough hospitals that are already very poorly looked after, understaffed, in very dismal conditions. And one would love to see more money and effort and time being put into that rather than adding a new infrastructure which opens the door for, more corruption possibly, because that often does. But when we did a little bit of research, we saw that Namibia actually has less hospital beds per 10,000 people than the minimum recommendation by the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization actually says, listen, the minimum amount of beds that you need for 10,000 people is 29. 29 hospital beds for 10,000 people.
Yeah.
We only have about 27,000.
Yeah.
So we actually need more hospitals. And the interesting thing is we're a small population, but we're in a very vast country.
Abroad,
so we want to have those clinics that can respond to people who are in more isolated areas. But still, we need more beds. So we do need this hospital.
Yeah. You see, and also as per that article, they were releasing some statistics that were released by the National Statistics Agency, which says that we have about 49 hospitals and 421 clinics in Namibia. It's actually very interesting to just visualize how they are spread across the country, 421 clinics. Chai. We know very interesting numbers to see.
A lot.
Yeah. But it is very important to know that if state funds are used correctly, more can be done for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A good thing that the people were caught at NAMRA.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
Justice was served.
A good sign.
Yeah, I think on that note, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, I hope our listeners learned something.
Yes.
I definitely did. I love being able to just clarify certain things about how our government is put together and how everything works. You're a wealth of information, and I love the way you share it. Thank you so much, Nora.
No, thank you so much.
I can't wait to go through this with you again next week.
Yes, no. Till next time.
Cheers.